Did you know Mr. Clean wasn't based on just a fictional mascot? Aunt Jemima's image has a long and controversial history that changed over time. And the famous Gerber Baby wasn't a real baby photo at all, but a simple sketch that became one of the world's most recognizable logos. In this special compilation, we uncover the surprising origins behind some of the most recognizable faces ever used in marketing. Watch now and find out the story of Mr. Clean, Aunt Jemima, and the Gerber Baby, right here on History of Simple Things. First up, Mr. Clean. With his bald head, muscular build, and spotless white shirt, he's one of the most recognizable cleaning mascots ever created. But was he inspired by a real person, or was he simply invented from scratch? To understand why Mr. Clean became such a cultural icon, you have to go back to the 1950s. Television was booming. Companies were selling lifestyles instead of just products, and cleaning brands were fiercely competitive. Cleaners back then were harsh, so in 1958 Procter & Gamble launched a stronger all-purpose cleaner, but they needed something more memorable than the product alone. And that's how Mr. Clean was created. Mr. Clean was designed by the advertising agency Tatham Laird, inspired by a strong sailor cleaning ships at sea. This is why he looks like a mix of a naval worker and a genie with a gold earring, muscular build, and a magical ability to make dirt disappear. His bald head and exaggerated muscles were intentional, making him look powerful, efficient, and instantly eye-catching on television. Mr. Clean stood out in the 1950s by flipping the usual image of cleaning ads, which often showed women doing exhausting housework. Instead, he represented effortless, almost superhero-like cleaning power that instantly caught attention. His fame was boosted by the catchy jingle, "Mr. Clean gets rid of dirt and grime and grease in just a minute," one of the most memorable advertising songs ever. What helped Mr. Clean last for decades was the personality built around him. Unlike many mascots that faded with trends, he evolved with the culture and became more than a salesman, a comforting symbol of freshness, order, and transformation. His before and after cleaning scenes were especially satisfying to viewers, tapping into the human brain's natural enjoyment of visual change, which Mr. Clean commercials mastered perfectly. Despite being so famous, Mr. Clean has always been surrounded by mystery. People have long debated whether he's human, a genie, or a sailor, and that ambiguity only made him more intriguing. In 2011, Procter & Gamble gave him a full name, Veritably Clean, which amused fans but clarified little. His unique design also sparked endless online debates, from action hero comparisons to theories about his gold earring, likely inspired by sailors. Mr. Clean stayed successful because he appealed to multiple generations. Older audiences trusted him from past ads, while younger ones found him funny and meme-worthy. Unlike many mascots, his bold, exaggerated personality kept him relevant online. This peaked in 2017 during a Super Bowl campaign that portrayed him in a playful, overly charismatic way, sparking viral reactions and introducing him to a new audience. Mr. Clean reflects changing views on household work and masculinity. While older ads targeted women, modern campaigns present cleaning as something for everyone, tied to confidence and pride. Over time, he became a symbol of competence rather than just a mascot. The brand also expanded into products like sprays and the popular Magic Eraser, known for its melamine foam that physically lifts stains and went viral in cleaning demos. Another reason Mr. Clean remained iconic is simple visual design. Experts in branding often praise the mascot because he's instantly recognizable even without text. The white clothing symbolizes purity and cleanliness. The bald head creates a simple silhouette. The muscular build suggests strength. The smile prevents him from looking threatening. Every detail was carefully designed to create trust and memorability. It's actually an incredible example of psychological marketing hidden inside a cartoon character. Today, Mr. Clean is more than just a mascot from old commercials. He's become part of pop culture history. He appears in memes, Halloween costumes, internet jokes, nostalgic television discussions, and even academic conversations about branding. Few advertising mascots survive for more than a few years, but Mr. Clean has remained recognizable for nearly 7 decades. That level of staying power is extremely rare. One reason Mr. Clean remains so effective as a brand figure is how flexible he is across different media. From traditional TV commercials to social media memes, he adapts without losing his core identity. This ability to stay consistent while still feeling fresh has allowed him to survive shifts in advertising technology and audience behavior that caused many other mascots to fade away. And maybe the reason he still works is because the idea behind him is timeless. Cleaning represents transformation. A dirty space becoming spotless gives people a sense of control and relief. Mr. Clean personifies that transformation in the simplest way possible. He walks into chaos, wipes everything clean effortlessly, and leaves behind order. It's oddly satisfying to watch, even today. So the next time you see that smiling bald man on a bottle in a grocery store aisle, remember that you're not just looking at a cleaning mascot. You're looking at a character that survived changing decades, evolving media, internet culture, and generations of consumers. A fictional cleaner created in the 1950s somehow became one of the most recognizable faces in advertising history. Next, Aunt Jemima. For generations, her smiling face appeared on pancake mixes and syrup bottles across America. But who was Aunt Jemima, and why did the brand eventually change its name and image? Aunt Jemima began not as a person, but as a product. In 1888, two men, Chris Rutt and Charles Underwood, created one of the first ready-mix pancake flours through their company, the Pearl Milling Company in Missouri. At the time, this was a major innovation because it made cooking pancakes faster and easier. However, the product initially struggled to sell, and the founders realized they needed a recognizable identity to stand out. In 1889, they chose the name Aunt Jemima, inspired by a popular minstrel song from that era. This decision would shape the brand's identity for over a century, tying it directly to entertainment culture of the time rather than just food. The character of Aunt Jemima was based on a figure known as the Mammy, a stereotype rooted in American slavery. This image portrayed a black woman as a loyal, cheerful domestic worker who cared for white families. It was commonly used in minstrel shows, where performers exaggerated racial features and behaviors for entertainment. The original Aunt Jemima reflected this stereotype, often shown wearing a headscarf, apron, and a broad smile. While it may have been seen as friendly or comforting at the time, the character was built on a distorted and romanticized view of slavery that ignored its harsh realities. Over time, this association would become one of the most criticized aspects of the brand. Although Aunt Jemima was fictional, a real woman helped bring the character to life. Her name was Nancy Green, a formerly enslaved woman who became the first public face of Aunt Jemima at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. She cooked pancakes, told stories, and portrayed the character as part of a marketing campaign. This made her one of the first black corporate spokespersons in American history. However, the role required her to act out a scripted version of the stereotype, reinforcing the image that the brand wanted to sell. After her death, other women continued to portray Aunt Jemima at events and promotions, showing how the character was treated as a role rather than a real identity. As the brand changed ownership, its popularity grew rapidly. The R.T. Davis Milling Company purchased the product and expanded its marketing, eventually renaming itself Aunt Jemima Mills in 1914. Later, the Quaker Oats Company acquired the brand in 1925, turning it into a household name across the United States. Over the decades, Aunt Jemima became one of the most recognizable food brands, appearing not just on pancake mix, but also on syrup, frozen waffles, and other breakfast products. Advertisements featured different women playing the role, and the character became deeply embedded in American culture, even as its origins remained largely unquestioned by the general public. By the mid-20th century, attitudes toward race and representation began to shift, and the Aunt Jemima image started to face criticism. In response, the company made several changes to modernize the character's appearance. In 1968, the headscarf was replaced with a headband, and her features were softened. Later updates in 1989 gave her a more contemporary look, removing the head covering entirely and adding pearl earrings. These changes were attempts to move away from the original stereotype while keeping the brand recognizable. However, critics argued that altering the image did not address the deeper issue, which was the character's origin in a racially insensitive caricature. In 2020, renewed global conversations about racial justice brought increased attention to brands with problematic histories. The company behind Aunt Jemima, owned by PepsiCo, acknowledged that the character was based on a racial stereotype and decided to retire the name and image. In 2021, the brand was officially reintroduced as the Pearl Milling Company, returning to the name of the original business that created the pancake mix over a century earlier. While the products themselves remained largely the same, the rebranding aimed to separate them from the history tied to the old identity. This marked the end of Aunt Jemima as a brand identity, closing a chapter that had lasted more than 130 years. Aunt Jemima was never just a person, but a symbol shaped by history, business, and culture. What began as a marketing strategy turned into one of the most recognizable brand figures in the world, yet it was built on ideas that no longer align with modern values. The story of Aunt Jemima shows how something familiar can carry a deeper meaning that changes over time, especially as society begins to question what once went unchallenged. Today, the name may be gone, but the conversation it sparked continues, reminding us that even everyday objects can have histories worth understanding, and that those histories don't stay fixed. They change depending on how we choose to see them. And finally, the Gerber Baby. That adorable face has appeared on baby food products for nearly a century. But many people still wonder, was it an actual baby? And if so, who was it? The truth behind this famous sketch is one of the most interesting stories in advertising history. Back in 1928, The company Gerber Products Company was looking for a new face to represent its line of baby foods. They launched a contest, inviting artists to submit drawings of infants that could symbolize health, innocence, and trust. Among the many entries, one stood out, not because it was overly detailed or elaborate, but because of its simplicity. It was a soft charcoal sketch of a baby with sparkling eyes and a curious expression. That sketch would go on to become one of the most iconic images in advertising history. The artist behind this unforgettable drawing was Dorothy Hope Smith. Instead of creating a polished, hyper-detailed illustration, she submitted a rough sketch, promising that she could refine it later if selected. But when Gerber saw the drawing, they felt it was already perfect. The raw, natural look captured something deeper than perfection. It captured authenticity. The company decided not to alter it at all, and in 1931, the image officially became the trademark for Gerber baby food. For years, people speculated about the identity of the baby in the drawing. Was it a famous child, a model, perhaps even a fictional composite? The truth remained a mystery for decades, fueling rumors and guesses. Some believed it was a young celebrity, while others thought it might have been a relative of the artist. The company itself stayed quiet, adding to the intrigue. Eventually, the identity was revealed. The Gerber baby was actually based on a real infant named Ann Turner Cook. At the time the sketch was created, Ann was just a few months old, living in Connecticut. She was the neighbor of Dorothy Hope Smith, who used the baby as her inspiration for the drawing. That simple connection, artist and neighbor, led to one of the most enduring brand images ever created. Ann Turner Cook grew up far removed from the spotlight of her infant fame. Unlike modern brand icons who often become celebrities, she lived a relatively normal life. She became an English teacher and later a mystery novelist, writing several books over the years. For much of her life, many people didn't even realize that the famous Gerber baby was a real person, let alone someone who had built a completely separate career. What makes the Gerber baby so remarkable isn't just the story behind it, it's the longevity of the image. Think about it. In a world where brands constantly update logos, rebrand, and chase new trends, Gerber has kept the same baby face for nearly a century. That kind of consistency is incredibly rare in marketing. It speaks to how powerful that original image was and how deeply it resonated with generations of parents. Part of the reason the image has endured is its emotional impact. The baby's expression is open and curious, almost as if they are discovering the world for the first time. There's no background, no distractions, just a face that feels pure and relatable. It taps into something universal, the innocence of childhood and the trust parents place in products meant for their children. Over the years, Gerber has held contests to find new Gerber babies as brand ambassadors, but these are separate from the original icon. The modern winners appear in campaigns and promotions, yet the original sketch remains untouched as the official logo. It's a fascinating blend of tradition and modern marketing, celebrating new faces while honoring the one that started it all. The story of the Gerber baby also highlights how something small can have an enormous impact. Dorothy Hope Smith likely didn't realize that her simple sketch would become a global symbol recognized by millions. It wasn't flashy or complicated. In fact, its strength came from being understated. Sometimes the most powerful ideas are the simplest ones. There's also something poetic about the fact that the Gerber baby wasn't chosen for perfection, but for authenticity. In a time when advertising often strives for idealized images, this sketch succeeded because it felt real. The slightly tousled hair, the gentle gaze, the soft lines, all of it combined to create a sense of warmth and trust that polished images often struggle to achieve. Anne Turner Cook herself embraced her unique place in history with humility. In interviews, she often spoke about how surprising it was to be connected to such a famous image. She didn't grow up in the spotlight, and she didn't build her identity around being the Gerber baby. Instead, it became a charming footnote in a life filled with teaching, writing, and personal achievements. So the next time you see that familiar baby face on a jar or package, you'll know the truth. It's not just a drawing. It's not just a brand symbol. It's a real baby, sketched nearly a century ago by a neighbor who grew up to live an entirely different life, yet remains forever frozen in time as one of the most recognizable faces in the world. And those are the fascinating stories behind Mr. Clean, Aunt Jemima, and the Gerber Baby, three of the most iconic brand mascots ever created. Want to see your top 3 favorite History of Simple Things topics compiled into one mega video? Comment your suggestion below, and we may feature it with a special acknowledgement for your contribution.